Past Experiences and Future Prospects by Eric Lansgaard and Lars Engberg Pedersen is premised on the perception of lost momentum on promoting aid effectiveness principles advocated by the Paris Declaration in 2005. The Paris Declaration was an important milestone in development aid as it signaled the shift from the objective of stimulating economic growth to emphasizing poverty reduction as the primary aim of official development assistance or ODA. This was followed by the Accra Agenda for Action in 2008 and Busan Partnership in 2011. By analyzing the implementation of the Paris Declaration, the limitations in the aid effectiveness principles, the presence of the agenda in current donor strategies, and exploring current trends in aid channels and modalities, Lunsgaard and Engberg Pedersen confirms their perception that donors are not adhering to the commitments of the aid effectiveness agenda. The intention of donors to adhere to the core dimensions of aid effectiveness is present, but certain exogenous factors, including the complex nature of delivering aid and the diverse context of aid implementation, resulted in a loss of momentum. Factors include one size fits all standards and certain trade offs. We start with the problem of the blueprint, or prescribed criteria or standard for aid effectiveness. It must be recognized that there are different contexts by which aid is implemented. Similarly, donors have diverse aid management systems, differences in modes of ODA utilized for least developed and middle income countries. So, rather than focusing on establishing a standard, effectiveness needs to be articulated in consideration of specific settings and must be contingent upon the national context. This is because development issues of middle income and least developed countries are different. Therefore, the role of ODA will likewise vary. For instance, the Philippines, as a middle income country, is far more advanced in providing basic social services than least developed countries like Sudan or Somalia. The main concern of the country is how to build its resilience, given its hazard landscape and risk profile, to ensure that development gains are not undermined by disasters and the climate change. Conversely, least developed countries, particularly those that are experiencing conflict, such as Sudan, prioritized peace building, since security and stability are necessary preconditions in order to maximize the impact of ODA. There were certain trade offs that led to results based management, focusing more on the donor than the needs of aid beneficiaries. To ensure aid effectiveness, ODA must be demand driven and needs based. The reason for the shift to results based management is in part due to corruption in recipient country governments, which undermined the donor's need for value for money. It is necessary to review the concepts of ownership and management and their points of contention. We must also be cognizant of the fact that the current context for development cooperation is different from that from which the Paris Declaration emerged. Agenda 2030 that promotes the Sustainable Development Goals include objectives that bring together different stakeholders and provides an avenue for reflection on how to move forward from lessons learned on aid effectiveness. The ideas behind the aid effectiveness principles remain valid and have proven to be durable throughout its transformation from the Paris Declaration to the Busan Partnership. Despite the agreement and commitment of actors to aid effectiveness, the old habits of lack of coordination, isolated efforts, overlapping and redundant activities, and ineffective aid supported interventions die hard. Therefore, the role of evaluation is emphasized. Evaluation and monitoring should be consistently carried out not only to assess gaps but also to provide a broader view of improvements in aid provision and implementation. Just a couple of insights. We go back again to the question: effectiveness for whom? We understand the need for the donor country to ensure value for its money or its return on investment. since development aid money is hard earned money by its citizens. But the primary objective of making sure the delivery of aid is effective should be measured against its impact on the general population. That is the most telling way of gauging effectiveness. For instance, as the number of people experiencing hunger decreased, is there an increase in employment? How many hospitals or health facilities are available per community? Are there enough school buildings and teachers to ensure the quality of education? Are there enough services provided for the elderly and persons with disabilities? Are there programs that will safeguard the health and well being of children during their first 1,000 days? More than measuring burn rates and thinking of program outputs and outcomes. I think these are the questions that we should be asking if we are to measure the effectiveness of aid. Although the SDGs were mentioned, it was not made clear how the goals set by the SDGs and Agenda 2030 will be operationalized and properly articulated in the aid effectiveness agenda. Objectives set by the SDGs should serve as a guide as to how aid effectiveness should be measured. Effectiveness of delivery should therefore be measured on its overall impact on the population and not solely against the value for the donor's money.